You learn the algorithm, you know the rules of the game, and then you know how to win the game. When you first publish your content, it gets distributed to 20% of your followers and to a portion of people who are not your followers, but those whose interests align with your content. Then the algorithm measures your content by two things: watch time and engagement. And the platform cares more about watch time, because the longer someone spends on their platform, the more they get paid from ads. So if a person spends time watching your content, it gets pushed to more people with similar interests. Otherwise, if the content doesn't grab the viewer's attention, it gets no boost. Also, if a person shares, comments, likes, or saves your published content, the algorithm pushes your content to more viewers, resulting in more reach and engagement from a broader audience.
Devin Jatho is an entrepreneur that managed to gain over 300,000 followers on Instagram because of his unique and interesting style of editing short-form content. And as you saw in the intro, in this long tutorial, I am going to show you how to create one of his reels from Instagram completely from scratch. So I have to tell you, firstly, I created the graphic that will be animating in Photoshop, but you don't have to do that. I did that just to be able to create the first part of this reel. So without further ado, let's start with this tutorial. I created this whole graphic just to be able to do the intro of this video. So in the intro, this graphic is getting blurred and gray, and then the text appears. But first thing that I want to do is I will make this graphic a little bigger, because I see that there is a place for that. Okay, that's good. So go to 21st frame, because I actually checked in Devin's video. And in this moment, we'll start making the background gray and blurred. So in order to do that, go to Effects and Presets and search for Hue and Saturation. Apply it on this graphic. So keyframe the channel range in this moment, and now go to 105, so 30 frames, and keyframe the channel range in this place again. So click U on keyboard to show you your keyframes, and keyframe the channel range. And in this moment, decrease the master saturation to like -78. And by doing that, we created a color change on this graphic, as you can see. And right now we also need to make it blurred. So go to Effects and Presets and search for Gaussian blur and apply it on this layer. Right now keyframe the blurriness in the same places, and on the second keyframe just increase the blur. I think 20 is pretty good. And right now we'll create this text animation. So first of all, we just have to create this text. So right click, new text, and I will be back when I do that. Okay, so this is how my text looks, and right now I see that we should also decrease the lightness of the graphic. So select the graphic layer, click U to show your keyframes, and then also at the second keyframe decrease the lightness. So I will set it to -60. Right now, as you can see, it's also getting darker. Okay, so let's go back to text, and I don't have exactly the same font that Devin is using. So the font that I'm using is called VP Pixel, and this font also has kinda video games vibes. So this is what you should go for. You can of course also use another font. And right now what we have to do is add a glow to this text layer. So search for glow and apply it on the text layer. And right now play with the settings. So these are my settings: glow threshold 55%, glow radius 32, and glow intensity 0.3. And right now we can animate this text. So in order to create the blurry animation of this text, you have to go here, click on animate and add a blur. And now go to the first set of keyframes from the graphic. Now I will hide it and increase the blur to whatever value you like. So I will set it to 25, I think it's pretty good. And right now open range selector and keyframe the offset in this moment. Go to the second set of keyframes from the graphic, and even after that, let's say like 4 frames or maybe 3 frames, and keyframe the offset there. Okay, so this is how the created text looks. And one thing to keep in mind is that we want to create every one of these lines individually. So every one of these lines should be a separate layer. So select graphic layers and click U to show you where are the keyframes. So firstly, let's animate the master algorithm text. So go here, open this text and click on animate and add a blur. And right now set the blur to whatever value you feel will be good. So I will set it to 25. Let's call this animator blur. And right now open the range selector and keyframe the offset in the places where there are keyframes on the graphic. Actually put the second keyframe like 3 frames after the second set of keyframes on the graphic. And set the offset here to 100%. This way, as you can see, we create this blur reveal animation, but this is not everything. Right now go again to animate on this layer and add opacity. Let's call this animator opacity. and keyframe the opacity in the same places, so here and then here, and go to range selector on this opacity and keyframe the offset in the same places where you keyframe the blur. Now set the opacity to 0, and on the second offset keyframe set the opacity to 100%. One more thing, move this second keyframe of the opacity 3 frames before that, so like there, because this way this blur will go faster than the opacity, and because of that you will have more letters blurred, and this is what we want because this is how it looks in Devin's video. Actually, I can show you that. Like, you see when you move the keyframe back, more of the letters are blurred. So I think this 3 frames difference is perfect, and it's really similar to what Devin created. And so this is how you create this animation. Now you can just select the blur and opacity animators and paste them on the rest of the text, and let's see how this looks right now. Yeah, I think it's perfect. And now we'll create this number count effect. So go to 54th frame. And by the way, I am checking when should I start the animation on the original Devin's video, because I want the timing of my video to be the same as Devin's. But if you don't care about the timing and you don't want to create exactly the same video as Devin, then you can basically start this animation whenever you want. I will actually also pre-compose these text layers. Okay, so create a new text layer and type 350k here. I will hide the other text. Okay, go to effects and presets and search for slider control and apply it on this text. And right now, expand this text and alt click on the stopwatch next to the source text. And now connect the source text to the slider of the slider control, and this way the number on the screen will display the value of the slider. As you can see, if I set the slider to 79, the number on the screen is also 79, and you can play with that. So right now, keyframe the slider in this moment. And one more thing, in the expression field, you want to type +k, because this way after the number you will have the letter K. And in a moment I will show you what we'll do to display the 1 million. Right now, set the slider on the first keyframe to 350. Then go to 211, so 61 frames, and keyframe the slider here and set the value to 972. Right now, as you can see, it's working, but it has the decimal numbers. So what we'll do is go to expression field and type Math.round and include our whole previous code except for +k inside of these brackets. And also, I was wondering why it is not working, and it was not working because the M in the Math.round has to be a capital letter because it matters. And right now, as you can see, it doesn't have the decimal numbers and the number is growing. So from 350k to 972k, the number is growing fast and then it slows down. So that's why we'll create 3 keyframes. So go to 218 and keyframe the slider here again. And let's type 997 here, let's say. This way, this number right there is growing slowly. And right now, 1 frame after the last keyframe, we'll just cut this layer in this place. And in this newly created layer, we'll just type 1M. But we don't see this 1M right now because we have to delete all the previous effects from this layer. So delete the keyframes on slider, delete the expression in the source text, delete the effect. So after deleting all the effects and expression in the source text field, you will be able to see 1M. So that's what you wanted. Okay, so now go to the first keyframes from the layer with thousands, and we'll start animating this number on the screen. So it's basically appearing by opacity keyframe, and also there is a scale keyframe because this number is getting a little bigger and bigger with time. So this is pretty easy. I will do that and then I will show you how I did that. Okay, so this is how it looks right now. As you can see, it's getting bigger and then it's getting replaced with the 1 million. And so I did that by keyframing the position, scale and opacity. So opacity at the first keyframe is at 0% and at the second keyframe is at 100%. Scale at the first keyframe is at 100 and at the second keyframe is at 110. And in the position keyframe, only the Y value is changing because this number is getting higher on the screen. Okay, so right now what we'll do is we'll add a glow to this. So go inside the composition with the previous text and copy the glow from there. Paste it on both of the new text layers. Right now, in order to finish this animation, we have to make this text in the background darker. So go to the graphic layer and copy the hue and saturation and Gaussian blur effects. Now go here on timeline, so to the first set of keyframes on this layer, and copy all of these effects from the graphic to the composition with the text And right now, as you can see, this text is getting darker, but it's too slow right now. So select this composition with the text and click U to show you the keyframes, and move these two keyframes closer, I would say right there. So even before the second set of keyframes on the first layer. And right now it looks like that. So yeah, this is what we want. And right now this is everything in the intro part of this reel. And now we'll edit the body of this video. And from now on in this tutorial, I will also not show you everything that I'm doing, but I will only show you the hardest things, because things like animating the position, the scale, or the opacity is really easy, and me explaining how to do that just makes this video unnecessarily long. So yeah, right now I will show you how to create the transition between the intro of this video and the body of this video. So go to 316, so here, and right now we'll mark this point on the timeline because this is the time when the next screen will start appearing. So hold shift and click 4. This way you can mark the point on the timeline. What I will do is I will also pre-compose these two layers. So right click on them and click pre-compose, and I will call it numbers. This way the whole animation is just easier to manage because there will be a lot of layers in this composition. We can actually make that shorter, and this one also. And so this transition is just basically present screen. So everything that is on screen right now is going up, and it's revealing what is underneath, and underneath is the new screen, like part 2 of this video. So in order to do that, we can just right click and create a new null object, put it at the top, and connect these 3 layers to this null object. And right now this animation will last 5 frames to 321. So let's go to 321 and let's keyframe the position on the null object there, and go to the mark on the timeline and keyframe the position there. Go to the second keyframe and just move everything up like that, and right now it's disappearing. Also, one more thing is that this transition has the motion blur effect on all of the text on this screen. So in order to achieve that look, you can go to this view. If you don't see it, click toggle switches modes and you should be able to see it. And right there you have the icon for motion blur, and check this box in the 2 compositions with numbers. Now you can see that when this animation starts, the text is blurred, and we have to create the background that will be revealed underneath. So create a new solid, put it at the bottom of everything, and set the start of this solid when the transition is starting. And right now we'll go to the start of the timeline, and we'll make this new solid the same color as the background at the start of this video. So basically select this new solid and search for gradient, and select gradient ramp, put it on this solid, set the start color to the same color that is at the top of this background, so this dark purple color, and now set the end color to this color, and let's see how it looks right now. Okay, and right now I will import the graphic layer again. I do that because right now when I will be creating the new rectangles in After Effects, I want to be able to build them on that so that they are the same size. So basically this new graphic layer, I will call it model, and I will decrease the opacity of that. And now the new screen after the transition is basically just text and new rectangle with an arrow inside of it, and the text is getting revealed with a blur. So this is the same technique that we did in the intro, so you already know how to do it. So I will see you when I create this new scene. Okay, so this is how it looks for me right now. We can hide the model graphics so you can see it better. Okay, so you do that by creating the rectangle with a rectangle tool, line you make with a pen tool, and then you just either write this text from scratch, or you can go to the text composition at start and then copy 2 lines from there, because remember, these 2 lines also have to be as separate layers because we'll want to apply the blur reveal on the second line. And if you decide to copy these 2 layers from the first composition, you don't have to create the blur reveal animation again, but you will have to remove this animation from the social media algorithm text because this text is not blurred. Also, one more thing is that if you want to create this animation by yourself, I think it is necessary to create compositions. Like after every animation that you've created, just select all of the layers that took part in this animation and recompose them, because there will be a lot of layers and later on this will be unmanageable. So right now go to 321, and this is the first frame when this new graphic is being shown. So basically you can move all of the layers associated with this graphic to this point, because before that it will not be shown anyway. Okay, yeah, it looks good. Okay, and right now we can pre-compose all of these layers. Put the start of this composition right there. Okay, if you pre-compose the layers and then you want to manage them using the composition here, using one layer that is a composition, then you have to make the start of all of them at the start of the timeline. So like that. Right now this should work. Yeah, it's good. And so right now this new graphic is just getting bigger, and I think there is also an opacity animation, just a little bit. At the start this graphic is less visible than later. So as I told you, I will not show you that, and I will be back when I create this animation. Okay, one more thing before I create the part 2 animation. During the transition between the first part and the second part, the original graphic in the background is not just moving like here, so basically just moving up. It's also disappearing, and it also has a motion blur. So what I would do is apply motion blur also on this layer, and now click T and keyframe the opacity on this layer. And on this moment, so on the last keyframe of this transition, the opacity should be at 0. And let's see how it looks right now. Yeah, now I think it looks better. And so yeah, now I will create this part 2 animation, and I will see you back when I do that. Okay, this is how this animation looks. And as you can see, I also forgot about the arrow in the middle. So I found a white arrow on the internet and imported it here. Okay, now we'll create this rounded triangle animation. So basically go one frame after the arrow disappeared. And you can see that this triangle is kinda weirdly animated. But in order to get this look, we'll have to create this triangle with a pen tool. So not with a triangle tool. So draw a triangle like that. Set the fill to white and set the line cap to round and line join also to round. Right now I will move the start of this layer here. Also change the shape of that a little. Okay. And in order to animate this, expand this layer, go to add and add a trim paths. And now keyframe the end here, go 5 frames later and keyframe the end here again, and at the start set the end to 0. Okay, this animation is not exactly the same as you can see, but I think it's really close and it anyways looks good, so I will leave it like that. But one more thing, it's a little detail, but we want to make the rectangle and the line and this arrow and then this triangle all glow. So we want to add a glow effect to all of this. So we can go here and just copy the glow, for example, from this text here. So go to the text at start composition, select the text layer and copy the glow. From there, right now go inside this part 2 composition and apply this glow on everything except for the text. Yeah, right now it looks really good. Go back in the main composition and now go to 501 or 126 frames. And in this moment we'll start the new animation. So for now we want to move this graphic to the right top corner, and this animation will last 10 frames. So from 501 to 511, like that. Okay, so this animation looks like that. So it's just getting bigger and it's going to the right top corner. And what we also have to do is apply the motion blur on this composition. But when applying the motion blur, you have to be careful because you have to check if you have position keyframes somewhere before, and we have position keyframes somewhere before, but when looking at this I see that it looks pretty good. Actually, it might even look better than without this, and so I think I will just leave this motion blur for the whole composition there. And so now go to 505, and in this moment the line starts being drawn to the left of this rectangle. If you want to stick to the timing that Devin created, then you will have to count how many frames are from here to the start of this composition, and then we'll go inside this composition and add this line. So it's 130 minus 96, so it's 34. And so right now go inside this composition and go to 34 frames, so here, and right there we'll create a new line. So select a pen tool and draw a line like that. Hold shift so that the line is perfectly straight. Of course, remove the fill and set the start of this line in this place, so in the 34 frames. Of course, if you don't care about the timing, then don't pay attention to me saying stuff about frames. To check if this line is correct, you can go to main composition and see where it is. And I see that the first line is too long. So let's go back here and let's modify it. Okay, now it looks pretty good. Now it's in the middle. Make the stroke of this line the same width as the stroke of this rectangle, so 4 in my case. and I will also apply a glow to it. So copy this glow and apply it there. And this is why it's really good to work on these compositions here, because when you want to change something in the animation, you don't have to look through all the layers in the main composition, but you can just select a specific composition and see what's inside there. Okay, now this line is getting created in 9 frames, so expand this left line layer inside of this part 2 composition, go to add and add a trim paths. And right now go inside trim paths and keyframe the end, go 9 frames ahead, keyframe the end right there, and go to the first keyframe and set the end to 0. So right now this line is getting created. And there is one more thing that we have to do before we start creating a circle, and that is, after this animation you can see that the top of the screen is more dark, and so this rectangle is less visible at the top. So in order to get this look, I will go up here, select rectangle tool and draw a rectangle like that. Right now move it to the side, and I will set the color of this rectangle to the color of the top of the background, so a dark purple color. Okay, place it where you want the blur and the darkness to apply, so I would say like there. And right now go to the effects and presets and search for fastbox blur, apply it on this layer and change the blur dimensions to vertical and increase the blur radius. I would say this looks okay, and right now we'll just decrease the opacity of that and set it to like 80. And this way you can see that the bottom of this graphic is kind of glowing and the top is not, and this is basically the effect that we wanted. Actually we can put this shape layer a little higher and we can increase the blur radius. This looks pretty cool. I will call this layer dark top, and I will put this layer above part 2 animation but below everything else. And you have to put the start of this layer in the moment where this animation is starting, so 501 in my case, because you don't want this darkness at the top before that. Actually, I will also animate the position of this darkness layer, because right now it is appearing out of nowhere and it doesn't look good. And let's see how it looks right now. Yeah, now it's much better. Now it's only getting darker like in this moment, let's say. So right now we'll start creating this circle. Okay, so go up here and select ellipse tool, and right now draw a circle like that. Now remove the fill and set the stroke to white. Let's call this layer circle. Let's move this layer down, and now we can just instantly pre-compose this circle layer, because we'll create more layers inside of this composition. And now go inside this composition and let's check what's the stroke on this rectangle. It's 4. On this rectangle it's also 4, but it doesn't look the same, so maybe it's because of glow. So for now we'll just continue, but later I might change that. So right now duplicate this circle, go to 607, and here the thin circle animation will be finished. So it's basically 157 and here it's 140. So 17 frames after starting this composition. So right there, let's go to 17 frame and expand this circle, go to add and add a trim path. And right now keyframe the end here and keyframe the end at the start. And at the start set the end to 0. Okay, so now to animate this circle we have to go to effects and presets and search for radial wipe and put it on this circle. Right now keyframe the transition completion at the start and then go to 17 frame and keyframe it again, and at the start set it to 100% and at the second keyframe set it to 0. And right now you can see the circle is being drawn, and now also this wider circle gets created in the same time. So we can copy this effect and paste it on this circle, and right now 2 circles are getting created. But what we can do is increase the stroke of the white circle to, let's say, 7. Let's see how it looks. But another thing is that at the second keyframe on the white circle, we want it to only be completed in 20%. So it's pretty easy, because we can see that in the radial wipe effect. We should set the transition completion to 80%, and this way you have exactly 20% of the path completed. And right now we should also increase the stroke because it's way too thin. Let's see how it looks in the main composition. I would say I will increase the stroke on this one, so on the thinner one, to 5. and I will increase the stroke on this one to 15. Yeah, 15 looks good, maybe even a little thicker, so maybe even 17. And right now let's go to the main composition, part 2 animation, and let's copy the glow from here and paste it on the white circle layer. And right now let's see how it looks. Yeah, perfect. And 3 frames before the circle is fully animated, the text starts appearing inside of the circle. So let's move back 3 frames and create a new text layer and type 2% here, but we'll change it anyway because it will be a number counter effect. Set the start of that here, and let's move 2 frames after that, and right there the text followers will start appearing. And now I just have to create the number counter effect and the opacity and position and maybe scale keyframe. So I already showed you in this video how to create the number counter effect, so I will be back when I finish that. Okay, so this is how it looks in my case. And now go to 707, so here, and we'll start moving the screen to the left and creating the second circle with 80%. And so, because right now I have 2 compositions with graphics, because I have the circle left and part 2 animation that I want to move, we have to create a new null object and put it above these 2 compositions. Set the start of that right here, and of course check the motion blur box for the circle composition. And right now parent link both of these compositions to this null, and this transition to the right lasts 10 frames. So go to 717, so here, and keyframe the position there, go to the start of this null and keyframe the position here, and at the second keyframe move everything to the right. So it should look kinda like this. Let's see. Yeah, motion blur is applied, everything is correct. Now, in order to create the right circle, we don't have to create it from scratch. What you can do is go inside the left circle composition and copy all of the layers here. Now go to the main composition, go to the project and create a new composition and call it right circle. Okay, right now go to the main composition and drag the right circle composition into the timeline and put the start of this composition right there, so at 721. I will also put it below the left circle. And right now go inside this composition and paste all of these layers here. And now in the white circle layer, change the value on the second keyframe of transition completion to 20% and change the value on the second keyframe of the slider to 80, and let's see how it looks right now. Okay, yeah, it's good. So now let's go to the main composition and let's see how it looks there. Okay, so the only problem there is that it's a little off to the left, so we can just change the position of that a little. Okay, one more thing is to change the text from followers to non-followers. Okay, so this is how it looks right now. Okay, and now I must tell you, I made a mistake by making separate compositions for both of these circles, because it will be much easier if I had these circles in one composition with the rest of the graphics. Right now I will leave it like that, but for the rest of the video I will put most of the graphics in one composition. So as you can see, here should be the circles, so I just left a place for them here, as you can see here in the main composition. So I recommend that you put everything in one composition. And right now the next animation, so these 2 lines, this rectangle and the blur reveal effect on the text your niche. This starts at 911, so 236 frames. And so you already know how to do everything in this animation, how to animate the lines, the rectangle and the blur reveal effect on the text. So I will be back when I finish that. Okay, so I'm back and this is what I created. And I didn't show you that because right now it's basically just repeating things that I already told you how to do. And in the main animation, I basically just animated the position and the scale on the null object to move the whole composition. And right now I will show you how to create this algorithmic rectangle with the numbers changing inside of it. So this new rectangle will start appearing at 1210. I will put a mark right there, so Shift +4. And right now we'll go to part 2 animation and create this rectangle. So basically we can just copy the rectangle from up here and now move this layer down right there and place this layer at the top of the timeline. Go to the moment where you want this to start appearing. Okay, so the border is done, and right now we'll create the light purple background inside of it, and it's a gradient also. So create a new solid, let's call it purple gradient. and the color doesn't matter because we'll anyway change that. So go to effects and presets and search for gradient and select gradient ramp, apply it on this layer. And right now actually the easiest way will be to copy the model layer from the main composition, go back to part 2 composition, paste it here, make it visible and increase the opacity to 100%, and right now move it here and change the colors of this gradient to the top color, so this dark purple, and bottom color, so lighter purple. But now we'll just make both of these colors lighter, so like that. Okay, now we can delete the model layer and we have to make this layer smaller, so decrease the scale. Now place it on this rectangle, actually decrease it so it looks like that. And right now with this solid selected, go up here and select the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle like that. And right now this rectangle is just a mask for this background, so try to make it the same size as the border of this rectangle. And you can make it a little bigger, because right now we'll move the border of this rectangle above it. And this way, as you can see, the background is inside of this border. Let's see how it looks in the main composition. Okay, yeah, you can see that it's way lighter, and this is what we wanted. Okay, and now in order to create these digits changing from 0 to 1 inside of this rectangle, we have to create a new text layer and type 0 here. Now move this text layer in the place where you want it to appear. Okay, and right now open this text layer, go to text and alt click on source text. And right now type this code inside of this expression, and this expression changes the number from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 0 at a random time. So basically right now you can copy this layer, and if we move this second layer a little to the right, you can see that they are changing at random moments, so not in the same moments. So this is what we wanted basically. And right now we have to select both of these text layers and pre-compose them. So we are creating a composition inside of a composition. Move the start of this composition here. And right now go inside of this composition and copy this layer a lot of times. Because right now we'll basically create this layout and just fill the whole rectangle with these numbers. Okay, this is how it looks in my case. And also do not worry about creating too many of them, because anyway right now we'll apply a mask to that. So with this numbers composition selected, go to rectangle tool, so create a rectangle mask like that. And right now we'll move these letters one layer down, so it will be below the border of this rectangle. When we now move through the timeline, you can see that the numbers inside of it are changing, and it might be lagging a little because generating these numbers require a lot of power. Right now we can pre-compose 3 layers that create this rectangle, so the border, background and numbers. Okay, and right now we'll decrease the opacity of these numbers. So I will set the opacity to 37% or maybe 40. Okay, so to complete this rectangle we have to put the settings icon in the middle. So import the settings icon from the asset folder. Okay, of course change the scale and the position. And now we'll change the color to white. So go to effects and presets and search for change to color. Now apply it on this settings and set the from to the black color and to white color, and change the change option to hue, lightness and saturation. This way you can change the color of this icon. And right now we'll apply a glow to this. So go to a random layer where you have the glow, and important thing is to put this glow above the change to color in the effects. Okay, so basically now animating everything up until the bars animation is easy, and you already know how to do it because we'll only have to animate 2 lines on the left and the right, and then we'll animate the text watch time and engagement. And in these 2 texts you have to animate the opacity and the position. But I will also show you right now how to animate this settings icon spinning. So it's really easy. You just have to make sure that the anchor point, so this point, is in the middle. And if you're using your own icon and it's not in the middle, you have to go to pan behind, and right now you can edit the place of the anchor point. So put it exactly in the middle, and then you can just animate the rotation. As you can see, when I change the rotation, it looks like this icon is spinning. So I will see you back when I animate everything up until the bars animation. Okay, I'm back, and this is how it looks right now. So yeah, everything animated as I told you, but there is one thing that I changed because I don't know why, but at the start of this composition these numbers are not changing in my case, so I had to push this composition a little to the left and then also push the opacity keyframes to the right, because I can show you right now, right there, these numbers are not changing and I don't know why, they are just all zeros. And yeah, if this is also the case in your animation, you have to put this composition to the left. And also these new text layers, so watch time and engagement, I created separate layers for them. So right now what you have to do is parent link both of them to the null object, and this way you will still be able to control the position of the whole composition by one null object. And now at 17:15 we'll start zooming the whole composition on the watch time. Okay, so this is how it looks right now. Okay, one more thing is that we have to enable the motion blur on these new text layers, so on watch time and engagement, so click here. And one more thing that I didn't tell you about is that I smoothed these 4 keyframes, so this zooming out animation right there. So in order to do that, select these 4 keyframes, click F9 on keyboard, go to graph editor, and right there select this set of keyframes. And by moving this yellow point, create an ease in animation. So for me the graph looks like that, and I think it's pretty good. And the same here with the zooming on the watch time animation, but this time I just selected these 4 keyframes and clicked F9, and I didn't create an ease in animation. Okay, so right now we'll create this green bar. So go to 18:15, so right there. I will mark this point on timeline. And now go to the part 2 animation, and I will create this bar right there. So there are 2 easy ways to actually create this bar. And the first one is by using pen tool, and the second one is by using rectangle tool. And if you decide to use a rectangle tool, you have to do it by creating this rectangle and then creating another layer that will be a mask layer for this rectangle, and then animate this second layer so that this bar appears on the screen. But I think in our case I will just use the pen tool. So all you have to do is draw a straight line like that, and you can do that by holding shift. Make this line pretty long, I think even longer, like that. Right now increase the stroke of this line, I would say to 21, I think it looks pretty good. Let's move the start of this layer to this point where it should start appearing. As you can see, it's pretty good, but we have to put it a little to the left. So go to part 2 animation and just put it to the left, like that. I will change the name to purple bar. Yeah, right now it's pretty good. Now I will import the graphic that I created in Photoshop, just to be able to copy the color for this bar. Okay, so there is the graphic, and right now go to this bar, go to the stroke options and change the color to this purple color, hit OK. Right now we can hide the graphic layer, and now we have to only add a glow to it. Yeah, and right now it's pretty good. Let's see in the main composition, but as you can see right there, it's barely visible. So we'll have to make this glow stronger. I mean, just a little stronger. So go right there and increase the glow intensity, let's say to 0.5. Yeah, right now it's more visible and I think it looks better. And so now we have to animate this bar. So open this layer, go to add and add a trim paths to it, and keyframe the end of the trim paths at the start. Then go to the main composition and go to 1917, because I checked that in the original video, 1917, and let's make a second mark right there and go to the part 2 animation. Right now your timeline is already on this point, and keyframe the end right there. At the first keyframe, set the end to 0, and this way, as you can see, we've animated this bar. But right now what we'll do is smooth this, so select both of these keyframes and click F9, go to graph editor and make a slight ease in animation, so something like that, maybe on this side also a little. Go back right there and let's see how it looks. Yeah, now it's good. Okay, so now we have to create the text layer with percentages that will move with this bar animating on the right of this bar. So right click and create a new text layer. And basically I already showed you before in this video how to create the number counter effect. So this is the same case, so I will see you when I create that. Okay, so this is how it looks right now in my case. And one more thing that you have to keep in mind is that by smoothing out these 2 keyframes on the purple bar, we made this bar appear faster at the start and then slower at the end. And so right now when keyframing the position of these percentages, you have to also select these layers and click F9 to smooth them and go to graph editor, and your graph should look something like this. So When I select all of these 4 layers and I go to graph editor, you can see that they are kinda the same but just different scales. It's keeping the distance between the bar and the percentages. Okay, another thing is that at the start we have to animate the opacity of this bar and this percentage. And let's see how it looks. Okay, yeah, it's good. Right now, one more thing is that at this moment, so when this bar is starting to appear, in the main composition we have kinda this view. So we see only like half of this rectangle with the settings icon. But when this bar is fully animated, in Devin's video we don't see this right line. So we can actually just in this moment completely make this right line layer invisible. So select this layer, hit U to show your keyframes, actually hit T to show you the opacity keyframe, and right there keyframe the opacity and go 1 frame later and keyframe the opacity again and set the opacity to 0. And this way, when in the main composition we go to the right, because this bar will be fully animated, we won't see this right line right there. So right now, one more thing is to apply the motion blur effect on both purple bar and the percentages. And right now go to the moment where this bar is animated to this point and we'll start moving the whole composition to the left. Okay, now when creating this movement, I see that we also have to decrease the opacity on engagement text. So select this layer and keyframe the opacity, go 1 frame later and keyframe the opacity and set it to 0. And this way we'll not see the engagement layer. Now go to 1921 and in this moment the icons will start appearing. So Instagram, TikTok and YouTube icon. So import these icons from the asset folder. Now change the position and scale of them. Okay, so right now you have to animate the opacity on these 3 icons. Then we'll move the screen back to the left and we'll animate another bar. This time it will be a green bar with a money counter. So all of these things you already know how to do, so I will be back when I create that. So yeah, I've animated everything up until this point. And right now I will tell you how to do some of the things here. So first of all, you have to remember to check the motion blur box on these 3 icons when you import them. And right now I will show you how to create this money counter effect. So how to add the $sign at the start and then set the comma with 3 decimal places. So go inside the part 2 animation and I basically copied the percentages layer, but I changed the expression inside of here because right now this expression looks like that. And don't worry, you don't have to type it manually. I will give you this expression in the description of this video. So what this expression basically does is creates the $sign at the start and then 3 decimal numbers with a comma. Okay, then the screen is moving down and here I just created the line. As you can see there, I just created the line and I added the clock icon. So you have this icon in the asset folder and right now I will show you how to animate the rotation of this icon. So basically, as you can see, the opacity is animated and the rotation. And so in order to make this clock spin, all you have to do is make sure that the anchor point is in the middle. So here, and when anchor point is in the middle, when you change the rotation, it looks as if only the hands of this clock were moving. So this is what we want. And right now we'll create the people appearing behind the clock. And so import the person icon from the asset folder. And I will actually create this in the main composition right now. And both the clock icon and the person icon are originally black, but we'll change the color of them. So I already showed you in this video how to change the color of an icon, but I will show you one more time. Go to effects and presets and search for change to color, apply it on this icon and then set the from color to black. And change the option here to hue, lightness and saturation. Okay, right now change the position and the scale of this person. This is a good size. And right now copy this layer and move the second layer to the right. And right now what we'll do is with this second layer selected, go to pen tool and draw a mask like that. And this way this icon is only visible inside of this mask and so his arm here is not visible. And right now we can copy this layer and just move it to the right. And this is how we'll create the first row of the people. Also one more thing, select this person icon layers, right click and pre-compose them. I will call it people. Right now this will be much easier to manage. Okay, so this is how the first row should look. Okay, now in order to create the second row, we have to use 7 person icons. And right now copy the latest icon and move him up there. Then copy the first person icon, so the one that doesn't have his arms removed. Move him right there. And with this layer selected, go to pen tool and draw a mask that will look something like this. Yeah, now we'll just be copying this layer and moving him to the left like that. Try to make the distance between them kinda the same so it doesn't look weird. And right now for the last person, copy the first person layer, move it right there, and of course create a mask that will cut his right arm like that. Okay, we got our group of people. Let's see how it looks in the main composition. Yeah, pretty good, but we'll actually move them a little higher. So like that. Okay, go back inside of this composition. Right now, find the first person layer and we'll have to keyframe the opacity. So keyframe the opacity at the start, go 7 frames ahead. Keyframe the opacity again, and at the first keyframe set the opacity to 0. Right now copy this opacity effect and paste it onto all the other person icons. Now we have to determine which layer is which person in these 2 rows. I could have done that at the start because now it's harder, but I will be back in a moment when I arrange the order of these layers. Okay, right now, as I will show you, these layers are in order. So top layer is the first icon that will be shown, and as you can see, they are in order. And right now what we'll do is stagger every one of them by 1 frame. So basically move 1 frame, move the start of this layer here. 1 frame, the start of the next layer here. 1 frame and here. And do that with all of these layers. And now this looks like that. Okay, so right now, basically in the same moment where the person icons start to appear, we want the number counter in the middle also to start appearing. So I will be back when I create that. Okay, so I've created the number counter effect. As you can see, it's appearing on the screen and then it's increasing in scale and the position is changing and the number is growing. And in the main animation, it is also positioned correctly, but now we have to decrease the opacity of the people composition. So just click on this composition and click T and decrease the opacity so you get the look that you want. So I would say the opacity on 32 is pretty good. And now the last thing is to add a glow to this growing number. So go to a layer where you have the glow, copy this glow and paste it here. Okay, the problem is that we don't see the watch time anymore. So just make this layer longer. If at any point during creating this animation you see that something is not working, that you can't see something, first thing is to check if the composition of the thing that you're missing already ended. Okay, and right now we'll move the whole animation to the left so we can create a next part of this animation. So whenever you create a new layer, new composition, remember to always parent link it to the null object too, because we are using this null object to move the whole composition. As you can see, there are a lot of keyframes there. Also, one more thing, when you create a new layer, if you want it to have the motion blur, then remember to check this box. Okay, so this is how this transition looks right now. So basically the text engagement and the line next to it come back on screen. And one more thing that we have to do is make the 3 social media icons disappear. In this moment, so where the focus is on the left side of this animation, we can actually make the 3 icons invisible. So just set an end of these 3 layers here. And right now when we transition to the right side, these icons are no longer here. And also one more thing I had to do is, because I didn't make this graphic here in After Effects quite right, these 2 bars are too long. And when creating this transition, I had to actually not only keyframe the end on the trim path from 100% to 0, but I had to also change the position of both of these bars. So I had to move them a little to the left. But of course I will move them back to the normal position when this part of the animation is finished. So it will not change anything. Okay, so right now I will create this whole part of the animation and then I will tell you what I did. So I want to show you how to create this effect. So a number where the thousands are separated by the comma. So you already know how to create the number counter effect, but this time in the expression field you have to write this command. And of course I will give you this code in the description of this video. And right now we'll create this red line crossing this number. So in this moment, with nothing selected, go to pen tool and just draw a line like that. Right now, of course, decrease the stroke and I will put the start of this layer here. Also, I'm putting it a little lower because this number will go down. You can see this is the final position of this number, so this line is actually in the perfect place, but I will make it a little shorter. Yeah, this looks pretty good. And right now let's copy the glow and paste it on this line. And now we'll animate this line, so go right here and add the trim paths to it. Go at the start and keyframe the end there. Go a couple frames ahead and keyframe the end right there. and at the first keyframe set the end to 0%. And right now I will go to 3111, and in this moment this red bar will start changing color to green, and also the glow will be increased, and this will also indicate the start of the next animation. So let's go right there, and in this moment select this bar, and right now keyframe the glow threshold, radius and intensity in this place, and actually go one frame before that, and here keyframe these values again, and at the second keyframe increase this glow, so basically decrease the threshold and increase the radius and increase the glow intensity. So you can see in a matter of one frame this glow is much stronger, and this is what you want. And right now also we'll start changing the color of this bar. So to do that, go to effects and presets and search for hue and saturation and apply it on this bar. And right now in this moment keyframe the channel range, and a couple frames later keyframe the channel again, and on the second keyframe change the color to green. So change the angles on this circle, and this color is pretty good, I think. So let's see how this looks right now. You can see that now it's red and the color is changing, going through orange, yellow and then green. And right now at 3115 we'll start decreasing the opacity of this line and of this number and of this red cross line. So I will be back when I do that. And right now go to 3124, right there you can see, and this bar will start expanding to the right. So keyframe the end, go to 3515 and keyframe the end here again and set the end to 100%. And this is how long this whole bar will take to animate, because in the meantime when this bar is animating we'll add these 4 icons there. So go to 3211 and this is the frame when the icons will start appearing. And right now import these 4 icons from the asset folder, and I will actually make all of these icons animation in the main composition. So right now change the color of all of them to white, and of course I will change the scale and the position of them. Okay, so right now they are in the right position and the scale is okay. And I've also animated the first icon, as you can see, and also I animated the opacity on the second icon. And right now I will show you how to create this orange circle with the message counter inside of it. So it's pretty simple, just go to the shape layers and select ellipse tool right there, and while holding shift draw an ellipse right there, position it here and delete the stroke and set the fill to orange color like that. Right now set the start of this layer where the start of the icons is, move this layer down above the chat, let's say, and right now copy the opacity keyframes from the chat and paste them here, but actually make this circle appear much faster on the screen than the chat. Actually even it should start appearing before the chat icon. So move the first opacity keyframe on the chat icon a little further, and this way this orange circle will be animated first and then the chat will start appearing, because this is kinda how it looks in the Devin's video. Actually I will put this keyframe here. Let's see how this looks, because now we also want to create the message counter inside of this orange circle. And to do that we just have to create yet another number counter. So now go to 3320. So here, and in this moment we'll start animating the opacity of the heart. So basically copy the opacity keyframes from, for example, chat layer and paste it on the heart. And right now I will go to 3405. So here, and up until this moment this should already be fully visible. So I will set the latter opacity keyframe one frame before this moment, and what happens right there is that at this frame this heart is getting a little bigger, the borders are changing color to red, and inside of this heart is also getting red. The first thing will be to increase the scale of this heart. So keyframe the scale at this moment and go one frame before that, keyframe the scale again and go at the latter keyframe, and here increase the scale just a little. I would say just by 1%. We can actually also change the color. Okay, so in order to change the color from white to red, we can use the already existing effect on this heart, so change to color. So keyframe the to option one frame before the transition and go one frame ahead, and keyframe the to option again, and on the second keyframe change the color to red, and this way you can see it's basically changing color. And only after doing that we'll create the inside of this heart. So select a pen tool and draw a shape like that. Now set the color of this heart to red, of course. And now set the start of this layer on this second keyframe, so the moment when there is the transition of colors, and place this layer below the heart layer and keyframe the opacity at the start. Actually keyframe the opacity one frame before the start and then keyframe the opacity at the start, and at this frame set the opacity to 0, and right now go a couple frames ahead and keyframe the opacity again and set it to 100%. And as you can see right now, this heart is getting filled with red color. Go one frame after the inside is fully transparent, and as you can see in Devin's video, at the end this heart is getting smaller again. Go at the last keyframe of the opacity of the inside of this heart and keyframe the scale. Go one frame ahead and change the scale by 1 point, so back to the original scale. And now if you made the inside of this heart too big, right now you might see some of the inside of this heart exceeding the borders. So you basically have to make the inside of this heart pretty small, meaning that it has to be perfectly on the edge of the start of the border, because then when the border decreases, you can see that it's still within the margin of the border, so we don't have to change anything. Okay, so the last thing is to animate this flag. So go to 3410, so right there, select this layer, and this is basically done by position and opacity keyframes. Okay, yeah, perfect. We've animated the icons. Right now I also imported the graphic again, because now I will create this video up to the end, because the rest of the things in this video you already know how to create. So the heart is getting smaller again, then there are animated lines and second group of people icons. And then the last graphic, which is just a rectangle with numbers, text and Devin's picture. So I will see you back when I finish this reel. Okay, I finished the whole animation and now there are only two more things that I want to show you. And the first one is how to get this blur at the top. So you have to basically create an adjustment layer. So right click here, new adjustment layer. Then put the start of this adjustment layer where you want this effect to start appearing. And with this adjustment layer selected, click G to select a pen tool. And now draw a mask like that. Then go inside of this mask and increase the mask feather. I set it to 446. And then apply the Gaussian blur effect from the effects and presets. And I've set the blurriness to 18. And this is how you get the blur at the top. And the second thing is that if you look at Devin's video, you can see that his graphic in this animation is kinda shaking, it's wiggling a little, and in order to get this look, we'll create another adjustment layer. This time this adjustment layer should cover the whole timeline, because we want this effect throughout the whole video. And go to effects and presets and search for turbulent displays and apply it on this layer. Right now go inside the turbulent displays effect. Now decrease the amount to like 10, let's say, and the size to like 20. Okay, I think this effect is still too strong, so decrease the size to 10 maybe. Yeah, I think now it's better. Maybe decrease the amount to 8. And right now go to evolution options and alt click on random seed and type time *3 right there. And what this does is it makes this effect change with time. So basically it's not static, but it's changing. And as you can see on this frame, actually you can see this frame is different than this frame, so it's working and all of the graphics are wiggling a little. And so this is basically everything in this video, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.